Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic today that I know a lot of you have been curious about, MSG.
Oh yeah, MSG. It really is fascinating how much debate there is around it.
Right, for decades now. So we're going to unpack the science. We'll look at how MSG is used, and we'll try to separate fact from fiction. What do you say?
Sounds delicious to me.
Perfect.
Yep.
So let's start with the basics for anyone who might not be totally up to speed. What exactly is MSG? What makes it so unique?
Well, MSG stands for monosodium glutamate,
Okay.
and it's basically the sodium salt of glutamic acid. And glutamic acid is a naturally occurring amino acid. You find it in tons of foods we eat every day.
Oh, wow. So it's in a lot of stuff.
You got it.
Yeah.
Like meat, cheese, tomatoes, even breast milk.
Huh. So it's not some kind of artificial thing made in the lab?
Not at all. Glutamate is essential for life. It plays a key role in our metabolism, especially in how our nerve cells talk to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, and what makes MSG so interesting is it lets us isolate and concentrate this naturally occurring compound. So it's basically amplifying that savory umami taste we find in so many foods.
Oh, umami, right. That fifth taste.
Exactly. It adds that depth and richness to dishes.
Yeah. So if glutamate's already in so many foods, why all the controversy around adding MSG?
Well, you see, the FDA has designated MSG as what they call generally recognized as safe. That's GRAS. They've looked at tons of studies, and they've decided that MSG, when you use it as a food additive, it doesn't pose a health risk to people.
Okay, but I know there's another side of this story, right? I mean, there have been concerns about possible health risks linked to MSG.
You're right. It's super important to address those. And a lot of that early research that kind of raised red flags was focused on giving really high doses of MSG, often to animals, and not even in the way humans consume it, like injections and really concentrated amounts that you just wouldn't find in your normal diet.
So you're saying context matters. Okay, so what are some of the specific concerns that researchers have looked into?
One of the big ones is MSG's potential impact on the nervous system.
Uh-huh.
Some scientists have this theory that too much glutamate, whether it's natural or added as MSG, could overstimulate your nerve cells,
Okay.
and that could lead to damage.
That sounds a little scary.
Yeah, and there have been studies mostly on animals that show a connection between high doses of MSG and changes in the nervous system. But you have to remember that these studies use way more MSG than humans would ever eat. And also, what happens in animals doesn't always translate to humans, you know?
Right, right. So we can't just assume those animal studies apply to us.
Exactly. That's why more research is needed, especially looking at, people eating normal amounts of MSG over a long time. That's more realistic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So neurological effects are one concern. What other potential risks have researchers looked at?
Well, another big area is MSG's effect on obesity and metabolic health. There have been some studies, again, mostly in animals, that suggest MSG might mess with your appetite control and contribute to weight gain.
Oh, wow.
But this research isn't conclusive at all, and studies on humans have been mixed. Some show a possible connection, others find nothing.
So it sounds like we're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Conflicting evidence and a need for more research focused on humans.
Totally. And that's why it's important to approach this topic with balance. We can't ignore the concerns, but we also can't jump to conclusions based on, just a few studies.
So how do we make sense of all this conflicting information?
Yeah.
What's the bottom line for someone who likes the taste of MSG but is also worried about the health risks?
Honestly, I think it comes down to personal choice and awareness. If you're concerned, you can always choose foods without MSG.
Right.
But it's also key to understand that the current evidence doesn't really support, a widespread fear or avoidance of MSG.
So it's about making informed decisions based on the best science we have and your personal preference.
Exactly. Plus, science is always changing, right? New research is coming out all the time. And that's going to refine what we know about MSG and other food additives.
Okay, so we've talked about the science behind MSG,
Yeah.
but I'm curious about the history and the culture around it. Where did this flavor enhancer even come from?
Well, the story actually starts way back in the early 1900s in Japan with this chemist named Kikuna Ikeda.
Yeah.
And he got really fascinated by the taste of kombu, that type of seaweed?
Yeah.
It's used a lot in Japanese cooking. And he was determined to figure out what gave it that unique savory taste.
So he was trying to decode umami.
Exactly. And through his research, he pinpointed glutamate as the key to that savory sensation. Then he found a way to extract it from seaweed and stabilize it with sodium, and bam, MSG was born.
Wow. And did it take off from there?
Oh yeah, especially in Asia. It was seen as a way to enhance the natural flavors of food, especially where that savory depth might be missing.
Okay.
So it became a staple in lots of Asian cuisines, adding that extra dimension of flavor.
But then, I know, like we touched on before, MSG's reputation took a hit in the 60s with that whole Chinese restaurant syndrome thing.
Right. That's really when things started to change for MSG. There were all these reports of headaches, flushing, and other symptoms after eating at Chinese restaurants. And MSG was blamed, kind of unfairly.
Yeah.
And even though lots of studies couldn't find a real link between MSG and these symptoms, the damage was done.
It's interesting how perception and cultural stuff can really shape how we see scientific
Oh,
topics.
absolutely. The MSG story really shows how fear and misinformation can take hold, even when the science doesn't back it up. It's a reminder that we've got to be critical, look beyond those attention-grabbing
For
headlines.
sure. So where does MSG stand today in our culture? Are things changing at all?
I think so. As more people learn about the science behind MSG, we are seeing a shift away from that fear-based narrative.
Okay.
Chefs are getting more comfortable using MSG and recognizing it as a powerful flavor tool, and consumers are starting to be less suspicious and more curious about it.
It sounds like we're getting a more balanced understanding of MSG, like recognizing its potential, but also its complexity.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting to appreciate MSG like any other ingredient. It can be used responsibly and thoughtfully to make great tasting food.
All right, so we've covered the history and the cultural side of things. Let's get practical now. How is MSG actually used in food? What kinds of dishes benefit from that umami boost?
Well, MSG is super versatile. You'll find it in tons of cuisines and dishes, from those savory snacks to processed foods, soups, sauces, even desserts.
Wait, desserts? Really? I never would have pictured that.
It might sound weird, but even a tiny pinch of MSG can enhance the richness of certain sweet treats. It can round out flavors in chocolate, caramel, even fruit desserts.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. So it's not just about making things taste meaty or whatever.
You got it. Think of it as a tool to enhance what's already there in the dish, to bring out those subtle notes and create a more balanced flavor.
Okay, I'm getting it now. Are there certain cuisines or dishes that work especially well with MSG? You mentioned it's a staple in Asian cooking.
Right, it has a long history there. It's used a lot in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Southeast Asian cooking. It adds depth to stir-fries, soups, noodles, you name it. But it's definitely not limited to Asian cuisines.
So it's pretty universal.
Yeah, pretty much. MSG can elevate all sorts of dishes no matter where they're from. Think of hearty stews, creamy soups, roasted veggies, even grilled meats.
Okay, I'm seeing the potential now, like a secret weapon in the kitchen.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, a little bit goes a long way. You just need a small amount to make a big difference.
Got it. Use it carefully and don't overdo it.
Exactly. Start small and adjust as you go. Trust your taste buds and experiment until you get that perfect flavor.
Okay, makes sense. We've mostly talked about MSG in restaurant food and packaged things. But what about using it at home? Any tips for someone cooking at home?
Here's the thing. You probably already have MSG in your pantry without even knowing it. Lots of common ingredients like soy sauce, Parmesan cheese, even tomatoes. They're naturally rich in glutamate.
So we're all using it already.
In a way, yeah. But if you want to try pure MSG, you can find it at most grocery stores, usually in the spice aisle.
Okay, cool. I'm feeling inspired to get creative in the kitchen now. But before we wrap up this part, are there any myths or misconceptions about using MSG at home that we should clear up?
Oh, yeah, tons. One of the biggest is that MSG is this mysterious chemical-filled substance. But as we've been talking about, it's just the sodium salt of a natural amino acid.
So more natural than people think.
Exactly. Another common one is that MSG is only used in unhealthy processed foods. But as we've discussed, it works just as well to boost flavors in fresh homemade dishes.
So it's about using it thoughtfully.
That's it. Don't be afraid to experiment, but start small and adjust to taste. And most importantly, trust your own palate. If it tastes good, you're good to go.
I love that. It's about owning your choices in the kitchen and having fun exploring new flavors. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The science, the history, how people see MSG, even how to use it in the kitchen. But what about the future? What do you think is next for MSG?
That's a great question. As we keep learning more about taste and how our bodies perceive flavor, we're getting a much clearer picture of how MSG works, like on a physiological level.
So we're moving past those simple ideas that MSG is either good or bad.
Exactly. We're realizing that MSG can enhance certain flavors in really subtle ways. It can boost saliva production. It might even affect how full we feel after eating. It's not just about creating that super intense umami blast anymore.
I see. It's more about the whole experience, right? How
Yeah.
all the tastes work together.
Right. And this deeper understanding of taste is influencing chefs and home cooks too. We're seeing a real push towards using MSG more openly and intentionally.
So instead of avoiding it, chefs are embracing it.
Yeah. They're realizing it's a valuable tool to create complex flavors and make dining more enjoyable. And as a result, people are becoming more accepting of MSG as a natural flavor enhancer.
That's pretty cool. Changing perceptions can really drive food trends. What about innovation? Are there any new developments in the world of MSG?
Definitely. There's a big focus on creating new and improved types of MSG, like combining it with other natural ingredients to make flavor blends that are more complex and specific to certain dishes.
So it's not just plain MSG anymore. It's about tailoring it to different kinds of food.
Exactly. And get this, there's even growing interest in exploring the possible health benefits of MSG.
Hold on, really? I thought we were talking about potential risks this whole time.
I know, right? It sounds counterintuitive, but it goes to show how science is always evolving. Remember, glutamate is super important for our bodies. It's involved in metabolism and how our brains work. So it's not crazy to think that MSG, when eaten in moderation as part of a healthy diet, could actually be good for us.
That's fascinating. What kind of benefits are they looking into?
Well, some early studies suggest that MSG could make us feel fuller, which might help with weight management. There's also some evidence that it might aid digestion and maybe even improve cognitive function.
Wow.
But, gotta emphasize, these are very early findings. More research is definitely needed to confirm any of this.
So lots more to learn. But it definitely opens up some interesting possibilities for how we might view MSG down the road.
Absolutely. It just highlights how important it is to keep an open mind about this ingredient and be ready to consider new information as it comes out. Science is a process, and our understanding of MSG will probably continue to evolve.
This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective on MSG. It's amazing how an ingredient can go from being controversial to having a comeback story.
Yeah, it really is. And as we wrap up here, I think it's important to remember that we should approach MSG, and really all food ingredients, with a sense of curiosity, critical thinking, and of course, an adventurous palate.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for joining me on this flavorful exploration of MSG. I hope everyone listening has learned something new and maybe even discovered a new appreciation for this often misunderstood ingredient. Remember, the more we know about what we eat, the better choices we can make for our health and well-being. So keep exploring and keep those taste buds tingling. Until next time.